celebrating the art of storytelling and the artists who bring stories to life. This is the Viewfinder podcast with Chris Hadley.
Hey everyone, I'm Chris Hadley, and welcome once again to the Viewfinder podcast. With nods to seminal coming-of-age movies like John Hughes' Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused, writer and director Gregory Pellerito's Moments of Youth takes a funny, adventurous, and sometimes bittersweet look at one extraordinary day in the lives of a group of high school seniors. A day where frantic yet friendly competition leads to hijinks, hilarity, and ultimately self-discovery. You can see the film on Amazon Prime Video and other streaming platforms, and it's my honor now to welcome Gregory to the show. Gregory, thanks for joining me. It's great to have you on to talk about the movie. I loved it.
Oh, thanks so much, Chris, and thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and excited to talk to you about the film and hello to your audience and again, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, what is Moments of Youth about, and what's its overall storyline?
So, Moments of Youth takes place the night before a senior class in high school graduates, and this particular school always has an enormous scavenger hunt as kind of the last hurrah for the school. And this year happens to be the largest prize in the history of the school. Um, so throughout the course of the night, they do a bunch of really fun and adventurous and funny sort of tasks relating to the scavenger hunt and a lot of youthful moments that they'll kind of remember for the rest of their lives. But we're also hinting at something much more serious throughout the first approximately 2/3 of the movie. And we eventually reveal what that is. A traumatic event happened to this group, to this school, and particularly this group of friends that we follow. And this night kind of serves as their way to put that, that event. You can never say behind them because it's something that they'll always bring with them probably every day for the rest of their life. But it's their way of moving forward and into the future. And this night ends up being about anything other than a scavenger hunt and winning a lot of money.
What and or who inspired you to make the film?
Yeah, so some of the movies you mentioned, I've always loved John Hughes. I've always loved the '80s films that he made, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and The Breakfast Club. And uh, I'm a '90s kid, so the ones from the '90s I absolutely loved, like American Pie and Can't Hardly Wait and 10 Things I Hate About You. I really love films that take place in one day. I think it's a really exciting kind of uh, way to tell a story, particularly about high school or youth. Um, Nobody really makes enormous changes to their being or to to their future. But in this case, this is a night that they'll never forget. And I was I was kind of inspired by all the movies that I love, really, and all the filmmakers that I love, the ones that you mentioned. Richard Linklater, I love Dazed and Confused. I I love the Whites brothers with what they did for American Pie, and of course love John Hughes. All of them. And then I would say that I like to tell stories that are similar to the ones that I love to watch myself. So, and I think I've always wanted to make a high school film. I've always, because of how much I love high school movies. Um, and yeah, I think the biggest inspiration for me was making a movie that was in line with the movies that I love.
The film's plot is based around a scavenger hunt that pits two teams of high school seniors against each other in a wacky and increasingly complex contest. What specifically inspired you to incorporate that as the engine of the story? And was it a personal experience participating in one, or was it the scavenger hunt ritual in general?
Yeah, so it was certainly both. It was participating in one that and a couple of them in throughout my life, but the one I did in high school was right before graduation, which my team won. Very proud to say. And I will eventually be releasing some of the pictures from that night. I've promised everybody I would. Uh, and it's also, just in general, I I think it's a fun sort of game to sort of build a movie around. I think it was a lot of fun to have these characters doing all of these really wild and adventurous tasks throughout the night. And so I think it was a combination of the fact that I really think it's a fun rite of passage, I'll call it, in terms of, like treating this as the last hurrah for this group of friends. And also the fact that I just really enjoyed mine, doing one. And I thought it would be a fun premise to build a movie around, and a lot of opportunities to do many different really fun and funny and outlandish type of uh activities on this scavenger hunt that you wouldn't probably really get to do in a teen film or really many movies, right? In terms of having to hop on a private jet at the last minute, things like that. Uh, and in terms of pitting the two teams against each other, uh, I think that's a really great way to frame it, because the two main teams that we follow, Commonwealth Court and the Shady Ladies, the eight of them are really great friends, but they get into competitive mode, and they want to win the scavenger hunt. They want to win all this money. Uh, However, throughout the course of the movie, we realize how close these eight friends are, and I think that by the end of the film, we realize that this night was about anything other than winning a ton of money, even though that's what it's framed as at the beginning. So many other things occur throughout the course of the night, and winning a lot of money is the least important of those. Even though, Carson could really use this money to get a car, and it could really help Lily in Nashville. Um, but as far as the places that I picked, there was a lot of inspiration from things that I did growing up. For example, I played on the baseball stadium that we feature in the film. I played lots and lots of games at that stadium. Uh, you know, and I think really just the nature of the closeness of these groups of friends is very similar to my friends group in high school, and still to this day, still very close with all of them, even at our reunion. Um, and so many of my really great friends from college, I'm still super super close with. So I hope that everyone kind of acknowledges the fact that, yeah, this night everyone gets into competitive mode and they want to win, and they want to win $100,000. But there's so many more important things that happen in their adventure this night, and ultimately that really their life and life is about so many more things other than winning a lot of money. And that's really what I was getting at.
Besides the obvious similarities that your movie shares with, of course, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Breakfast Club, Dazed and Confused, and American Graffiti and American Pie, what do you feel sets Moments of Youth apart from those?
I think obviously the nostalgia is very similar in terms of when you watch those films, you're brought back to that period. I think when you watch Moments of Youth, you'll feel like it's today. Um, so when I initially wrote the screenplay, it was all about a scavenger hunt, and it was all about kids having a really fun and adventurous and funny night, kind of like the best night of their lives was sort of the premise originally. Um, and that would have been a really fun movie. And I think there's a lot of films that are great that feature that exact kind of storyline. However, the more and more I got into the writing process, it sort of struck me that I wanted to make a statement that was very profound. Um, and I think that what this film does is it touches upon something that we haven't really seen a lot in film, but is very, very relevant to today's youth. And I think that the other films that we discussed, we have similar dynamics in terms of the characters, and there's a lot of similarities with what the characters experience as teenagers, which are fairly universal themes, regardless of if it's American Graffiti from that period or John Hughes in the 80s or into the 90s and 2000s. But I think with what Moments of Youth does is we feature something that is very, very, very um, unfortunate that it's taking place in this world, and it's happening very often. Um, I think for me, when I wanted to make a movie about today, I felt honestly a sense of responsibility to include this component. Um, and I think it's something that is universal. It's not just a United States um, story because a lot of people can relate to the characters, but then we have this, very traumatic event that we touch upon. And I think that is kind of what, on top of the other, the humor and the adventure component, I think that is the component that the whole world has really kind of, resonated with.
In terms of both the serious and the humorous sides of the narrative, what did you do to balance those extremes? How did you achieve that balance in both the script and the film scenes? And how
Yeah.
did you make the characters not just relatable, but also nuanced?
All really great questions. So first thing I would say is that when I met with all the actors and Corey, our director of photography, and our main production heads and our producers and everybody, I came up with kind of a scale. I said that if Breakfast Club is a one in terms of major teenage angst and emotion, and American Pie is, say, a 10 in terms of party, humor, all that fun stuff that's in that film. I wanted to be right smack in the middle at a five. So in terms of balance, I never wanted to be too melodramatic for no reason, and I never wanted to be too gratuitously funny for no reason. So all of the humor is sort of innately worked into each scene. It's not just to make people laugh. And the real emotional moments, uh, stylistically, I made decisions to um, have them look entirely different from the rest of the film. The whole movie is very vivid and fast paced, but then when there's an emotional moment, we really go very still, camera wise. Cinematically, everything's just very actor conversation, close ups. Very still. We're not moving the camera. People are not on the run as they're talking, as they are throughout the rest of the scavenger hunt. Also, the colors are very different in terms of what they look like while we're doing, a hunt related activity or a serious conversation. But I think, Chris, to be honest, I think that music is always kind of the heartbeat of the film. And if you notice, so much of this movie has music in it, and very specifically chosen music because of the fact that it enables us to shift from serious to dramatic, and that helps the audience know, okay, we can take a breath now because we're not racing to the next activity.
Mhm.
And then kind of when you go from one extreme of super serious to super funny, that's very challenging in terms of the viewer's perception. So what I tried to always do was build in a moment in between those two, a scene that wasn't too on either side. So it was a nice kind of progression from one extreme to the next. We segued from something that was, for example, from the big Freddy conversation in the van is a very poignant scene. It's a very emotionally charged scene. And then, two scenes later, they're off doing another scavenger hunt related activity that's um, back to the scavenger hunt, and there's some humor in it. So right in between, we have a nice scene between Principal Crenshaw and Darcy. So it's lighthearted, but it's not too serious, and it's funny, but it's not over the top humor, fall out of your chair type thing, so that the audience has a chance to really kind of take that progression to the next step.
Tell us more about the younger characters and the actors who play them.
Yeah. So as far as finding them, they were all the younger actors all auditioned through casting sites. They sent in a tape with the sides that we wanted them to read for each character. This was during COVID also, so uh, basically the bulk of the audition process was done through online submissions, and then we held a callback session in Manhattan, um, where I kind of narrowed it down to a handful of actors for each role, and that's how I picked the main cast. But as far as building in their kind of nuance, I had long just once they were all cast, I had very long meetings with each actor, and I kind of had them reread the script, knowing you know how the movie ends and everything, and then I gave them kind of my whole sort of um inspiration and everything, and the vision that I had for the story. And then I basically gave them, as actors, sort of the backstory in terms of how the traumatic event was related to them specifically. So even if they don't talk about it a ton in the film, everyone in the movie, and particularly the younger cast, they approached each scene and their performances are nuanced with all of that layered in. So the way in which that event affected their character personally is threaded throughout every one of their performances. For example, Lily, she dealt with it through her music. So it's evident that she is writing a song throughout the film, but that is really the way in which she sort of, from a therapeutic standpoint, handled the event and the tragedy, was through songwriting, which is a very common way that artists will deal with heartbreak or tragedy. So many of the best songs in the world are about heartbreak, right? So uh yeah, so that's really kind of what my approach was. We did a lot of work beforehand in terms of how the event affected them.
In terms of the young cast, what characters are there and who plays them?
So we have Karst. We have basically two teams that we follow predominantly. Commonwealth Court, and that is played by four actors. Um, Andrew Burdett, who plays Carson, Savannah Witten, who plays Brianna, Lincoln Glover is played by Jarrett Austin Brown, and Spencer is played by Micah Scroggins. The four of them um, have been the three of the four have been friends for a long time, and Lincoln just came to the school this year. And Lincoln sort of serves as almost like a narrator for the audience, because a lot of the stories he wasn't really privy to. So the other characters are kind of talking about things that happened prior to when the movie takes place, and that is ultimately how we reveal things to the audience. The other group of four is the Shady Ladies, and that is Patty Papadopoulos, who's played by Julia Tolchin. Olivia Freer plays Gemma. Lily, as we talked about, is played by Carolyn Kang, and and Kristen Grace Gonzalez, she plays Joyce. The Shady Ladies are best friends. They finish each other's sentences. They've been best friends forever, and the way in which the four actresses themselves gelled was really great to kind of you know direct each scene, because they really feel like they're best friends, and how four best female friends would be.
The film's scavenger hunt storyline also invites viewers to play along with it. when you wrote that storyline, how did you structure it to make it more open to audiences, thus involving
Yeah.
them in the game itself?
Yeah, I thought that it would be a fun experience for this to be almost like an audience participation a film in a way. So I tried to come up with riddles and kind of clues and things that most generations could play along with. So I kept it predominantly to kind of uh, pop culture uh, trivia in a way, if you want to call it trivia. Uh, so the riddles are mostly featuring well-known celebrities, as opposed to say like really difficult, mathematical equations, which would be, some could be somewhat challenging, or like real kind of history, riddles, or whatever it is, which I think, I did consider doing some of that as well, like make it much more of a almost like a colloquial sort of a trivia type of clues that were given. But I ultimately thought that it would be a lot of fun if it was people who were famous involved in the riddles, because I felt like most people know who all of the people are who we use in the film, as clues and or answers to the riddles. Uh, so I wanted everyone from each generation to kind of be able to participate. No matter what kind of their background is, I tried to make it fun for everybody.
And since today's senior scavenger hunts heavily involve technology, what did you do with the one we see in the film to make it both realistic and contemporary? And was there a research process involved in preparing the game itself and how it would
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, so as far as the research process, the film was originally um, written to take place in Myrtle Beach,
Hmm.
uh, and it was very specific to the area down there. Um, However, when COVID hit, uh, I didn't really know what was going to happen in each state and when things were going to open up and what the regulations were going to be. So I got the idea basically to reset it in Connecticut where I live, and I know uh, so much about the state and all the locations and everything, but I also knew like when things were opening up and when things would be, available to us. So I want and my kind of goal was to shoot the film right when COVID, like regulations were lifted and we were able to go and do it like right away. And I knew that living here, I would be able to do that. As far as the technology component, yeah, I figured, we've seen a lot of scavenger hunts, um, in TV shows and movies and over, the course of many years. But I wanted to do something that really incorporates particularly social media into how the hunt is both organized and maintained throughout the night in real time. I also thought it would be very interesting to do that because the actors, and the characters are of the age of, generation that really uses social media for so much of what they do. And I figured that if that's the case, um, the hunt should feature technology very much. So I thought it would be fun to have the character of Tatum, who's sort of the organizer, and have her kind of updating everybody in real time through videos and text messages and ultimately things that are posted through social media. I figured it would feel very contemporary if we did that.
Besides the young cast, there's also a great cast of veteran performers, most notably Saturday Night Live legend Sherry O'Terry, who plays Mrs. Papadopoulos, Patty's mom and the den mother of the entire group, plus Gary Pastore, who plays her husband and the school's coach, Mr. Papadopoulos, John Farley, who is the brother of late Chris Farley, as the principal, Mr. Crenshaw, and Betsy Butler as his younger wife, Darcy. How were you able to get them to come on board this film, and what was it like working with both them and their younger counterparts?
Yeah. So all four of them, as well as Peyton Hughes, who plays Crystal, who's wonderful in the film, the five of them had worked with and are friends with a couple of the other producers on our film, and they had done a couple films with each of them, maybe one with some of them, but have worked with all of them, and they suggested all of them to me, and I was thrilled by the suggestions, and we made offers to all of them, and every one of them read the script, loved the script, and came on board. As far as working with them, it was a blast because I am a huge proponent for improv, and working with, Sherry and Gary and Betsy and Peyton and John. John is a master of coming up with stuff in the moment. He really is. And Sherry would just tack on these really, really funny lines to the end of her lines. But what I did, not just with them, is with everybody, was I said, come with ideas and tell me, additional things that you want to add into these scenes, or lines that you have, and I built them in a lot beforehand, and then on the day of the shoot, whatever the scene was, there was a million things that we came up in the moment that I came up with just being there with everybody, and I think that, like, by doing um all of that work beforehand that I mentioned, it makes the process when you're there the day of, everything goes so much smoother. But also, there's so much opportunity to elevate each scene, and those actors, those veteran actors, they're such pros, and every scene that they're in, they elevated because they came with, you know nuances and different interpretations of the characters that they came up with on their own, that they wanted to add elements to. And by doing so, I would then come up with a million new things in the middle of the scene. And then how they interact with the younger actors was really, special. I think particularly uh the case with Principal Crenshaw is I think it really shines through that the kids really love him as a principal. He's funny, and he's goofy, and he's quirky, but he's incredibly likable and charming and endearing. And everybody really gravitates to him. And then also, the Papadopoulos parents, they're kind of like the house that every kid goes to. That group of friends always goes to their house. There's always that house that all the friends hang out at. And in my case, growing up, that was our house. And I think Coach Pop and Mrs. Pop and Patty feel like a real family when you watch them. And the way in which, they all interact together feels like this is a very close knit group of friends with adult characters in the storyline who are very close to them. In some cases, they're sort of like family, the Papadopoulos parents with the rest of the children, and then the way in which, Coach Pop is coaches Lincoln, and he's working the carnival, and you know Principal Crenshaw, as silly as he is, it's very, very clear how much he cares about these kids, and how much they all care about him too.
What was the production process like, and how did you find the high school that much of the action takes place in?
Production, you know, because it's a smaller film, we probably, uh, you know, we we probably shot three or four scenes and sometimes three plus locations every single day because of the amount of different scenes that we have in this film. Uh, the entire production was about 25 days. We shot the bulk of the film in the fall of 2021, right when COVID regulations were just starting to get lifted. Then the second wave hit with Omicron. So then we shot some more in the spring. But we were pretty much all the way through until 2024 that we filmed a couple days each year while we were still editing. We were editing throughout that process, but there were still things that I needed to pick up shots wise. And uh, it was a lot of locations, it was long hours, but it was an absolute blast shooting the film. I loved every minute of it. We had so much fun. Everybody became such great friends. And I told everyone, I promise you guys three things. We're going to make a great film. You're going to make a lot of really great friends, and we're going to have an awesome time. And I know that we accomplished all three of those. So yeah, I think that working long hours on a film set is a joy because you're there making a film, and then it's always an absolute honor to be making a film. So for me, long hours are not an issue at all, and I'm happy to work them because I know that we're having a great time and we're saying something very, very, very powerful with this film. And like I said, I knew that we were going to make something special. Uh, as far as finding the high school, so interesting story. The exterior of the high school for the big drone chase at the end, that is my high school that I went to. Yeah. However, uh, when we showed up that day, I had a 16-hour day scheduled, but we ultimately only had 4 hours there, and it was John Farley's first day. So I shot the entire exterior of the school that featured John, and that was it. And then we moved locations after we wrapped with him that night to a parking lot to film the Shady Ladies in their car and some driving sequences. Uh, so we could not use the interior of that school. So then we ultimately shot that whole sequence of the big drone chase, um, three different schools and five different locations, and the whole production component to it took about 7 days. Uh, so it wasn't just one. To answer your question, it wasn't just one school. All three are here in town, but the exterior was my high school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I'm amazed at how seamless it all looks.
thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It was a lot of work to make it kind of blend cohesively. But I think given the fact that we had a lot of time to kind of prepare everything for each location and each scene, that made it a lot smoother for me to kind of map out how I was going to do it all.
Now that the film is out there, what have you taken away from making it? And what do you hope audiences take away from watching it, no matter how young or how old they are, or whatever they've experienced in their lives?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is the way in which the film has resonated outside of America in so many different countries throughout the world. Uh, and I think that what I hope everyone takes from it, and what I'm hearing that most people are taking from it, is that even the most heartbreaking and tragic event that you can go through, you can overcome it, and with the help of the people who love you and care about you, you can get through just about anything. And I think moments of youth, more than anything, it's about friendship, and it's really about hope. And I hope that people watch it and they feel that nostalgia component of high school or college or youthfulness, and that they really feel like somebody in the film was one of their friends or a couple of their friends, or similar to things that they did with their friends growing up. um, and I hope that it transports them back to that time and they have those fond memories, and that people really take from it that these characters, with what they went through, are pretty much underdogs now. And by the time the film ends, they're ready for their next chapter, and they're able to finally move forward. And I hope that propels people to realize, if if they are going through something difficult, that there is always a way through it, through the people who care about you, and through your own sense of faith and hope.
And finally, what projects are you working on right now, if any, and could you share any details about those?
Sure. So we are very busy getting ready for the next couple projects. It looks like my next film will be called The Final Score, which is about a star hockey player who's injured during his final high school game. He has a full ride to Boston College to play, but he was always also a very good musician. And he gets back to school and he starts rehabbing, and he gets injured again. So this sort of, again, another underdog type of story, but uh he uses music through the injury, and it's all about his progression from athlete to musician. So it's got a lot of you know very universal themes to it. It's got a love story in it as well. There's another 11 films after that I've written that we're ready to go with.
Wow.
Yeah, multiple different genres. But the other thing that we are doing is we're getting into television now too. One is a we have two that we're prepping now. Um, One is called Every Day's a Holiday. It's kind of a family kind of comedy. Uh, every episode is a different national day on the calendar.
Yeah.
I was on social media. I always see National Walk Your Dog Day or National Hot Dog Day. So every episode is a different one of those days, and it's set in a startup a calendar app company, and that's how we run kind of the story. And it's a small town, very very much like One Tree Hill, which is one of my favorite shows. Sort of meets The Office is kind of what I'm calling it. The other
Wow.
one is called Midnight on Broadway, and Midnight on Broadway takes place in the late night talk show world, and it's a um, it's a thriller, as well as the humor from inside of the late night talk show world. Basically, without giving away too much, it has a sort of spy component to it. And the main character, who is also the late night talk show host, sort of straddles those two worlds.
Hmm.
Uh, and very excited by both of those, and I'm obviously excited to make my next film. But it's fun getting into getting into movies. Excuse me, getting into television.
Yeah.
Uh, but I of course love making movies. Above anything else, I'm a writer director, and
Mhm.
and I'm also currently adapting. I was hired to adapt a novel into a screenplay, which I have done a couple other times throughout my career. But yeah, I've been busy. But the bulk of my time, other than that, is getting to do these awesome interviews like with yourself,
Thank
and
you.
and
Thank
and
you.
and marketing Moments of Youth. It's been a lot of fun to be on this side of the film, in terms of all the publicity and the marketing side. It's been a really cool and new
Yeah.
thing for me, but it's been a lot of fun.
And it was really fun and really cool to have you on, Gregory. And
Thank you.
please, by all means, come back
I
whenever you've
will.
got new projects. I would love to have you on the show, and I know that our listeners and viewers would love to have you on too.
Oh, I absolutely will. I'll come on as soon as I have the next one in the works.
Great, great.
Okay.
Gregory, thank you so much for coming on today to talk about Moments of Youth. It was truly a wonderful film. Congratulations to you, your cast and
Thank you.
crew, and keep up the amazing work on everything you got going on right
Thank you.
now.
It's so kind of you to say. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. I hope your whole audience has the same reaction and yeah, thank you guys for all the support and thank you, Chris, for taking the time to have me on and come talk about it.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. And again, thank you very much for coming on to talk about it as well.
Thank you.
That's the Viewfinder podcast for this week. I'm Chris Hadley. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, please stay safe, everyone.
The Viewfinder podcast is hosted, written, produced, and edited by Chris Hadley. The show's title logo is designed by Matison LeBlanc. Be sure to like, listen, and subscribe to the Viewfinder podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check out video versions of the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Viewfinder Podcast with Chris H, all one word. Let us know what you think by leaving a review on this or any other episode. If you have any questions, comments, and/or guest suggestions, or if you'd like to join Chris as a guest on an upcoming episode of the show, please contact us at theviewfinderpodcast@gmail.com. That's theviewfinderpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on X at ViewfinderPod, on Facebook at facebook.com/theviewfinderpodcast, and on Instagram at The Viewfinder Podcast. This has been The Viewfinder Podcast with Chris Hadley. This is Erik Woods speaking.